Hi everyone, welcome back to another Math Basics video, this time on multiplication properties. So multiplication is the same thing as repetitive addition. So for example, we have 4 times 3. That's the same thing as adding 4 3 times or adding 3 4 times, and that gives us 12. Multiplication is commutative. This is one of the properties of multiplication, and that means that the order you multiply doesn't affect your product. So what that means is 4 times 3 is the same thing as 3 times 4. And we can represent this with an illustration. So 4 groups of 3, or 4 times 3, is the same thing as 3 groups of 4, or 3 times 4. And we can see here that in both images, we still have 12 blue circles. So the product isn't affected by the order you multiply. Another important property of multiplication is that when you multiply two of the same signed numbers, you get a positive product. But when you multiply two different signed numbers, you get a negative product. So what I mean by that is if we're multiplying a positive number with another positive number, you're going to get a positive product. But when you have two negative numbers, you're also going to get a positive product. So as long as those two signs are the same, either positive and positive or negative and negative, you're always going to get a positive product. And if you have two different signed numbers, so a positive and a negative, or a negative with a positive, you're always going to get a negative product. Another important property of multiplication is that it's associative. That means rearranging the parentheses doesn't affect the product. So in this example, we have 2 times 2 times 3. But in the first case, we've grouped the 2 and the 2 together, and in the second case, we've grouped the 2 and the 3 together. When we solve the 2 times 2 first, we get 4, and when we solve the 2 times 3 first, we get 6. And this leads us to two different equations, 4 times 3 and 2 times 6. But both equations lead us to the same product, 12. Again, we can show these with different illustrations. In the first case, we have 2 times 2 grouped together first. That is represented by this square here, two groups of 2. And what we're doing is multiplying that by 3. So we have 3 groups of those 2 times 2 groups for a total of 12. In the second case, we group the 2 and the 3 together first, and that is what this rectangle here represents, 2 groups of 3. And what we're doing is multiplying that by 2. So we have 2 of these 2 groups of 3 for a total of 12. So you can see in both cases, the rearrangement of the parentheses doesn't affect the product. And the last property of multiplication that I'd like to touch upon is that multiplication is distributive. That means if you want to multiply a number by a sum, you can multiply the number by each term in the sum separately and then add the results together. In this example, we have 4 times 5. So I'm going to break down this 5 into 2 plus 3, and that's what I've shown here. And now what I'm going to do is multiply each term in the sum by the number outside the brackets, and that gives me 4 times 2 plus 4 times 3, shown down here. 4 times 2 gives us 8, and 4 times 3 gives us 12, and then once we add those two together, we get our answer, which is 20. And again, we can show this with illustrations. For the illustration on the left, I just have 4 times 5, so 4 groups of 5 blue dots for a total of 20. And on the right, I've split that into 2 groups. So I have one with 4 groups of 2 and one with 4 groups of 3. And as you can see, it still gives us the same answer for 20 total blue dots. I also want to mention that this distributive property also works with subtraction within the brackets. You just have to remember to multiply by both terms, including the negative term. For this example, we have 3 times 9. I'm going to rewrite 9 as 10 minus 1. So when we rewrite that, we get this over here, 3 times 10 minus 1. We need to make sure we're multiplying 3 with each term inside the brackets. And remember, terms carry the sign that is in front of them. So 10 is positive 10, and that 1 is actually negative 1. So when we apply this 3 to the 10, we get 3 times 10. And when we apply the 3 to the negative 1, we get 3 times negative 1. And that gives us 30 plus negative 3, which can also be rewritten as 30 minus 3, which gives us our answer, 27. Once again, I'd like to thank you guys for watching. I really appreciate it, and I'll see you in the next video.